What do you want to report, ma'am? I asked, feeling a bit wary. Elderly villagers in places like Hongjuan often rambled or made unreasonable demands. But as a police officer, I couldn't refuse to listen. I invited her into the office and poured her a cup of green tea, hoping she'd keep it brief. It's about Mrs. Ingek's case, the woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Mai, a neighbor of Mr. Min's, said. She looked at me with piercing eyes. Have you arrested He Chiang? Mrs. Mai, you mean Mr. Min's family? I asked, confirming. Yes, that's right. Mrs. Mai nodded firmly. Officer, you've got it all wrong. How could He Chiang be the killer? That girl has been kind, intelligent, and filial since she was a child, loved by everyone in Hongjuan. How could she kill her own mother? When mentioning Mrs. Engisi, I noticed a flash of anger mixed with contempt in Mrs. Mai's eyes, as if she had witnessed something unacceptable from the woman. I poured more tea and said gently, Mrs. Mai, can you tell me more? What makes you think He Chiang is innocent? This story starts from the beginning, Officer Toon. Mrs. Mai sighed, her voice heavy with sorrow. Through Mrs. Mai's account, I began to piece together the story. Mrs. Ngisi, her mother, held deeply patriarchal views, not uncommon in villages like Hongjuan, where many were obsessed with continuing the family line. He Chiang was the firstborn, but because she was a girl, Mrs. Ngisi despised her from the moment she was born. On a freezing winter day, Mrs. Ngisi cruelly left He Chiang under the bed, ignoring her cries, indifferent to whether she lived or died. Fortunately, Hun grandmother, a kind and sensible woman, saved her. The grandmother scolded Mr. Min harshly, forcing him to take Aoang in and raise her. But Mr. Min was weak-willed, obeying his wife over his mother, obsessed with having a son to carry on the family name. 7 years later, Mrs. Ngisi gave birth to a boy named Hu. The couple treated Hu like a treasure, pampering him endlessly, seeing him as the sole hope of their lineage. That Hu was a real scoundrel, Officer Toon, Mrs. Mai said angrily, slamming her hand on the wooden table, making the teacup rattle. He was spoiled from childhood, refused to study, and only knew how to cause trouble. I gave an awkward smile, trying to stay calm, and asked, Mrs. Mai, how was Hu a scoundrel? Tell me more. From a young age, he refused to study, was lazy, and went around stealing chickens and dogs. He once threw firecrackers into a neighbor's outhouse, causing panic. As he got older, he spied on girls bathing and put snakes in people's yards. Worse, he lured a teenage girl into his house and molested her. Luckily, she screamed for help and was rescued, or something terrible would have happened. Mrs. Mai recounted, her voice filled with fury. Because of his antics, Hu became the village pariah, someone girls avoided and mothers warned their children about. But what surprised me was Mr. Min and Mrs. Ngek's attitude. Instead of disciplining him, they defended Hu, dismissing his behavior as boys being boys, unworthy of blame. Mrs. Mai, I understand Hu was bad, but how does this relate to Mrs. Ngek's case? I interrupted, trying to steer her back to the point. How is it not related, Officer Toon? Mrs. Mai glared, her voice indignant. You haven't let me finish. I know Hu was bad, but... I hesitated, unsure how to continue. A suspicion began to form in my mind. Perhaps Mrs. Mai was hinting at something crucial. I ventured a guess. Are you saying He Chiang is a good girl who couldn't kill her mother, but who was bad enough to do something this heinous? Alright, I'll have it investigated immediately. Rest assured, we won't wrong an innocent person or let a criminal escape. Before I could finish, Mrs. Mai shook her head, her face showing panic. What's wrong, Mrs. Mai? I thought I guessed her point, but her alarmed expression told me I was wrong. What are you trying to say? Speak clearly, I'm listening. That scoundrel Hu is dead, Mrs. Mai shouted, her voice gleeful. Heaven has eyes, Officer Toon.
He deserved to die, dead.
I was stunned, unable to believe my ears. What was Mrs. Mai getting at after all this? Tell me clearly what happened. He got what he deserved. Mrs. Mai spat on the floor, cursing. If he were my son, I'd have beaten him to death long ago. Why let him live to ruin the village? From Mrs. Mai's chaotic recounting, I pieced together the full story. Young, unlike Hu, was intelligent and well-behaved from a young age. She passed the entrance exam for Li Nanfang High School in Hanoi, a prestigious school that made all of Hong'an proud. In a normal family, parents would have been overjoyed, but Mrs. NGC believed educating a girl was pointless and a waste of money. She planned to force Young to drop out and work at the BSC Thang Long Industrial Park, where many village girls toiled for meager wages. Young begged her mother, but Mrs. NGC was unmoved. Her homeroom teacher, Ms. Ha, traveled from Hanoi to Hongchuan to persuade Mrs. NGC to let Young continue her education. But she was harshly scolded and sent away. Ultimately, Han grandmother, a kind but resolute woman, pressured the family to let Young study. The grandmother worked odd jobs and sold goods at the market to scrape together money for Han tuition and books. Mrs. NGC contributed nothing, saving every penny for Hu, whom she saw as the family's pillar. Young excelled, earning a spot at a top Hanoi university with an outstanding score. The entire village celebrated, holding a feast in her honor. But Mrs. NGC refused to let Young attend university, calling her a useless girl whose education would only make her less valuable for marriage. Han grandmother, though frail, went door to door in the village, asking for donations to fund Han education. Thanks to the village's support, Young was able to step into the university lecture halls. Once in university, Young worked part-time to support herself, never asking her family for money. In her third year, her grandmother passed away from old age, and Young rarely returned to the village. She lived independently in Hanoi, working and studying diligently to repay those who had helped her. 2 years ago, Young returned to Hongjuan to prepare for her wedding to a young man working in central Hanoi. His family, aware of Han's situation, agreed to provide 80 million VND in dowry witut demanding anything in return, a rarity in a village where wedding customs were often burdensome. Mrs. NGC, never having seen such a large sum, immediately agreed to the marriage. But on the wedding day, Mr. Min's family reneged, who led a group of village youths to block the groom's family, demanding the 80 million VN dowry, threatening that without it they couldn't take Young. Mrs. NGC wailed and caused a scene, rolling on the ground, pressuring the groom's family to pay up, who even brought thugs to vandalize the wedding car and assault the groom, causing an uproar in Hongjuan. Young knelt and apologized to the groom's family in the village temple courtyard. Mrs. Mai recounted, her eyes red with tears. She said she wouldn't marry and told them to find a better girl. Officer Toon, can you imagine a girl suffering like Young? I silently handed Mrs. Mai a tissue, my heart heavy. In Vietnam, despite laws promoting freedom of marriage, parents remain a significant barrier. To Mrs. NGC, Young was little more than a commodity, raised to be sold for a high price. I sighed and asked, what happened next, Mrs. Mai? Young wanted to move to Hanoi to find work, but who convinced his mother to hide his ID card, trapping her in the village? She had to work at the BSC Thang Long Industrial Park for a pittance, Mrs. Mai said. Who was addicted to gambling, playing cards at the village tea stall and losing everything. He started demanding money from Young and even threatened to sell her to shady karaoke bars. Scum! I couldn't hold back, slamming the table. How did Hu die, Mrs. Mai? Gambling. He was reported to the police. That day it was pouring rain. The police came to arrest him, and he climbed the wall to escape through the industrial park's back lot, slipped, and fell onto a pile of scrap.
His head hit a nail and he died on the spot, Mrs. Mai said.
I frowned, deep in thought. The wall at the industrial park wasn't high. A fall shouldn't have been fatal. Mrs. Mai, a low wall like that, how could a fall kill him? I asked. He brought it on himself. Mrs. Mai gave a cold laugh. It was raining, the ground was slippery, and there was a pile of scrap materials from the factory. His head hit a nail. Heaven's punishment. Officer Toon. At this point, I furrowed my brow. As a police officer with over 10 years of experience, something felt off, like a strange scent in the air, whose death didn't seem like a simple accident. After Hu died, Mrs. NGC was like she'd lost her heart, fainting from crying several times, nearly collapsing in the temple courtyard, Mrs. Mai continued. We initially felt sorry for her, but she couldn't treat Echiong like that. What else happened, Mrs. Mai? I asked urgently, sensing the story was reaching a critical point.